Hello, it's Sandy Shellis with Environmental Coffee House. And today I am coming with something a little more, well, on the positive side, because all the time I'm hearing, well, there's never anything you talk about with solutions, and it's always doom and gloom. And, well, there are things out there that happened. There really are some decent things that happen. And today's story is called 99 Good News Stories from 2020 You Probably Never Even Heard About. Even during the darkest times, there has been hope. There's that word again, that pesky old word, hope. I don't know if I'm using it in hopium, but let's go over this article. It's by Future Crunch, and we'll talk about who they are after. So it starts out, and the person's name is Max C. Roser. If we want more people to devote their energy to making progress against large global problems, we should make sure that more people know that it is possible to make progress against such problems. And people will always work hard, that's me speaking, to make progress. There's been so much loss and grief and heartbreak in 2020 that it feels almost wrong to be compiling our traditional annual list of good news. Things can and do fall apart, and this year it felt like they really did. Amazing as it may seem, however, there were also big wins for conservation. Living standards, peace, safety, and human rights, clean energy, and yes, even global health. The reason you didn't hear about them is because good news doesn't sell advertisements or generate clicks, and that was more true in 2020 than ever before. Progress isn't a straight line, and it doesn't happen by magic. It depends on people who, even during the darkest of times, believe that it's possible to make the world a better place and who are willing to roll up their sleeves and do the work even when the cameras aren't watching. These are their stories. And off back of a horrible year, we think it's more important than ever to celebrate them. We hope you'll agree. And the first one is conservation. And this one is a seabird flying over Tristan da Cunha and foraging ground for tens of millions of seagulls, seabirds, and other marine species. Okay, so conservation. Yes. So the British territory of Tristan da Cunha created the largest ever protected area in the Atlantic Ocean and the fourth largest in the world. The 687,000 kilometer sanctuary is a no-take zone, meaning fishing and other harmful activities are now prohibited to protect wildlife found on and around the chain of the islands, including albatross, penguins, whales, sharks, and seals. And that was from National Geographic. Belize added another jewel in its crown as a global leader in ocean conservation. In August, it increased the size of its Sopadilla Cayes Reserve to 1,300 kilometers to encompass the Cayman Crown, one of the best preserved reef ecosystems in the region, home to many endangered species of corals, as well as previously undocumented reef types. That's from the EDF. In October, the Seychelles reported that 1/3 of its territorial waters are now protected, covering 410,000 kilometers of ocean, an area larger than Germany, and Samoa launched an ambitious new ocean conservation strategy with a commitment to create 36,000 kilometers of new, fully protected marine protected areas by 2025. 30% of its territorial waters. That came from the BBC. In November, 14 countries responsible for 40% of the world's coastlines signed a new pledge to end overfishing, restore fish populations, and stop the flow of plastic in the next 10 years. Ocean plastic. Each of the countries also committed to making sure all oceans within their national jurisdictions, a combined area of roughly the size of Africa, are managed sustainably by 2025, and that came from The Guardian. The most incredible environmental group you've never heard of, Pristine Seas, revealed this year that in the past decade, they've inspired the creation of 23 marine reserves. 2/3 of the world's fully protected marine areas, covering an area more than 5 million square kilometers. In the next decade, they believe they can double what's already been accomplished. In December, a new report by UN's FAO revealed that after decades of pressure, fisheries in the Mediterranean Black Sea are turning the corner. The percentage of overexploited stocks fell from 88% to 75% between 2014 and 2018. And since 2018, the number of fish stocks with high relative biomass has doubled. In perhaps one of the most globally consequential yet underreported stories of 2020, China has issued new rules for its distinct water fishing fleet. The country's wildlife protection law, it will now apply at sea. Ships will no longer be allowed to go dark or approach marine protected areas. Ship captains who break the rules will lose their license for 5 years, and company managers will be banned for 3 years. That came from earth.org. In the Pacific Northwest, the Yurok tribe began the reintroduction of the California condor to its ancestral lands along the Klamath River, and also signed a historic deal to begin the largest dam removal project in U.S. history. Wow. Freeing up 600 kilometers of spawning grounds for salmon and other migratory species like steelhead trout and Pacific lamprey. These efforts are as much about ecology as they are to right the wrongs that took place in this country for the last 200 years. At the turn of this century, Staten Island's landfill was the largest garbage dump in the world, 3 times larger than Central Park, with trash mounds 20 stories high. Today, it's a green oasis and one of the most unlikely urban ecological restoration success stories of all time. The radical fix: bury the rubbish, plant some grass, and do nothing for 20 years. 20 years. Just leave it. 20 years. A new study from Yale revealed that the mass of electronic waste generated by Americans has been declining since 2015. The contributor is the disappearance of large, bulky cathode ray tube TVs and computer monitors. The total number of electronic devices entering the waste stream is also leveling off due to convergence. Example, smartphones doubling as cameras. New satellite data revealed this year that the UK's woodlands now covers as much of the country as they did during the Middle Ages, thanks to 20th century forestry and rewilding practices. Robin Hood, eat your heart out. There's plenty more space too, researchers say. The area could be doubled without impacting important habitats, arable farmland, or peat bogs. Number 12. For the last 20 years, the world's largest seagrass restoration project has been running off the coast of Virginia. And during that time, The ecosystem has gone, wow, from death to full flowering. Over 70 million eelgrass seeds have been planted by volunteers. Today, as far as I can swim, I see lush meadow rays and the occasional seahorse. It's beautiful. Science news. How about this? A grassroots effort to restore Appalachia's mountaintops has now seen over 187 million trees planted on over 1,000 kilometers of former mining sites. And following a concerted reintroduction effort, those sites are now home to the largest population of elk east of the Mississippi. Elk. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, now more than 2 million people in northern India planted over 250 million trees as part of a government plan to tackle climate change. Pakistan announced the creation of 15 new national parks, expanding protected areas from 12 to 15% of the country. And Afghanistan announced the creation of the Bamiyan Plateau National Park, its fifth ever protected area, and the second biggest at 4,200 kilometers, home to the ibex, urial, and the Persian leopard. Now, that's pretty cool, I think. Singapore created its new 400 Ha Sungai Buloh Park, part of a wider initiative to convert industrial areas back to natural landscapes. And Vietnam established a new 22,132 hectare tropical forest nature reserve called Dong Chau Ki Nuc Trong, whose name means clear water in the ravine. Tomato. It's home to 40 globally threatened species, including the singing gibbon and the saola, a mysterious antelope-like bovine with a pair of long, straight horns known as the Asian unicorn. Now, attitudes in China towards the eating of wild animals changed drastically in 2020. Up to 90% of the public now supports strict bans, really strict bans, on the trade and consumption of wildlife, and more than 15,000 people were prosecuted for wildlife crimes this year, a 66% increase from 2019. China also removed dogs from the list of animals that can be treated as livestock. That signals the beginning of the end of the sale of live dogs for food and fur across the country. Vietnam banned the sale of protected wildlife at wildlife markets, as well as all imports of wildlife dead or alive, including eggs and larvae. The new directive included recommendations that conservationists they've been trying to get past for years, including tougher penalties for crimes involving wildlife trade and cracking down on domestic markets. That was from the Washington Post. And global meat production fell by more than 1% in 2020. This came off the back of a deadline in 2019, too. There have never been 2 consecutive years of decline. We're already at peak pasture, and it now looks like we might be approaching peak pork and beef. And that came from Bloomberg. Poland, the world's third largest fur producer after China and Denmark, banned fur farming, a law that will spare the lives of more than 5 million animals. And Copenhagen Fur, the world's largest fur auction house, announced it would close its doors within the next 3 years, citing the impact of COVID-19 and years of steep price drops. That's great. Germany started converting 62 military bases west of the old Iron Curtain into nature reserves for eagles, woodpeckers, bats, and beetles. Peru began reforesting the area around Machu Picchu, and Seattle reported that after 2 decades of cleanup efforts, the Duwamish River, or Duwamish, however those in Washington want to say it, is the cleanest it's been in 100 years. Now, Senegal revealed that over 152 million mangrove buds have been planted in the Casamance Delta in the past decade. Madagascar launched a drive to plant 60 million trees to mark 60 years of independence. And Uganda launched a project to restore 3 million trees to the Albertine Rift forests, close to where Dr. Jane Goodall began her career. Kenya reported that its elephant population has more than doubled from 16,000 in 1989 to 34,000 today. The number of elephants poached is also down significantly from previous years, just 7 in 2020 compared to 34 in 2019 and 80 in 2018. The number of lions living in this country, the country of Kenya, has increased by 25% too, from 2000 and 2010 to 2,489 in 2020. And that is from DW. Spain reported that there are now 894 Iberian lynx in the wild, up from just 92 in 2002, one of the best conservation success stories of modern times. The EU also earmarked European 18 million to keep the project running for the next 5 years. That gives conservationists a real shot at restoring a stable, genetically diverse population. And that was from La Vanguardia. 2 decades ago, the Burmese roof turtle was thought to be extinct. Conservationists have since helped the population recover to nearly 1,000 animals, some of which have now been successfully released into the wild in Myanmar. This is one of the best global turtle conservation successes we have. We came so close to losing them, and that came from the New York Times. So see, there's some good things happening amidst the doom and gloom. Blue whales, the giants of the sea, appear to be returning to South Georgia. The subspecies was heavily exploited by commercial whalers in the early 1900s, and though hunting blue whales was banned in 1965, the leviathans have remained rare visitors to Antarctica until now. A 2020 survey by British Antarctic Survey recorded 58 sightings, reinforcing other indications that the blues are coming back. 26. For the second year in a row, Iceland, one of the 3 remaining whaling nations, decided not to hunt any whales thanks to changing public opinion and falling consumption of whale meat. Announcements by the country's 2 whaling companies suggested that this may be permanent. It might be the permanent end of whale hunting. Oh my God. Wow. Bowhead whales, the only baleen whale that lives in the Arctic year-round, are approaching pre-commercial whaling numbers in U.S. waters, once hunted to just a few thousand individuals. And on the brink of disappearing forever, their numbers rebounded to about 10,000 by the turn of the 21st century and now have reached 16,800. This is really one of the greatest conservation successes of the last century. That was from The Guardian. In 2020, Myanmar became the second country in Southeast Asia to completely eliminate trachoma, the world's leading infectious cause of blindness. The achievement was part of a bigger global trend. The number of people at risk from trachoma has been reduced by 92% in the last 17 years, from 1.5 billion in 2002 to 137 million in 2020, and 13 countries have now eliminated it altogether. The WHO. Now that's only like 30 out of 99 pieces. And I wanted you to get the drift. They go on, they go through health, they go through a whole lot of interesting things. And here's one. How many times have you heard someone say that because we're living longer, we're more likely to experience cognitive decline? Not true. New research this year showed that the risk of a person developing dementia in the US and Europe is now 13% lower than it was in 2010. Alzheimer's is falling too by 16% per decade. Researchers think it's down to less smoking, better cardiovascular health, and better education. Well, sometimes. And this is an interesting one. A new report by Global Peace Index showed that since 2007, the majority of the world's countries, 113 countries, have reduced their armed forces. 100 have reduced military expenditure, and both imports and exports of weapons have reached their lowest levels since 2009. Remember the good old days when terrorism was front page news? The 2020 Global Terrorism Index reported that deaths from terrorism fell for the 5th consecutive year, and that the terrorism situation has improved in 103 countries, the highest number of countries to record a year-on-year improvement since the inception of the index. The Falkland Islands announced this year that it had cleared all its landmines nearly 40 years after the end of the war between Britain and Argentina. Tens of thousands of mines and bombs have been removed since 2009 by a team of specialist deminers, many of them from Zimbabwe. We never thought the islands would be completely mine-free. This is a momentous change, and that comes from the BBC. Italy abolished anti-immigrant decrees installed by former populists and reinstated humanitarian protection for migrants and refugees. The government has also cut the time needed for citizenship applications from 4 years to 3. Tonight, a wall comes down onward towards a country with more humanity, and that's the local. So there are so many of these. Germany, Mexico, Kazakhstan, they joined an international protocol on the abolition of the death penalty, the 88th nation to become a signatory, which fulfills a fundamental right to life and human dignity. The country's head of state, President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, quoted Kazakh poet and philosopher Abai, stressing the need for love, compassion, bold actions, deeds, and thoughtfulness. That's from the Astana Times. So these go on and on and on. Saudi Arabia and Palestine banned child marriage in 2020. Can you imagine? They were marrying off their 13-year-olds. Jesus. It never ends. Iran approved a measure to criminalize child abuse and neglect. Saudi Arabia abolished the practice of flogging convicts and banned the death sentence for minors. So there's just a lot of good stuff. I'm not going to read the whole 99 because if I do that, then it will be a very long recording. I'm going to put them in the show notes, the link to the article, and you can see for yourself. There are good things. It's just that we happen to report on climate change. We report on those things that aren't so wonderful. Perhaps we should change a little bit. I hope you like this. This good news stories comes from. It's a blog, Future Crunch, and they let's see if I can read a little bit more about Future Crunch. They have they're on Twitter, and news science, technology, intelligent optimism, not necessarily in that order. So they are kind of selling the positive in what's going on the planet, and that's okay. That's okay, as long as you're not walking with your eyes closed to the fact that all of these things are wonderful, but they're not stopping the larger emissions. They're not stopping growth. They're not stopping economic growth. They're not stopping the big picture. But they are feel-good things, and they are wonderful. And the activists that do these things, these people, these are the people that walk the walk and do not just talk the talk. So Future Crunch, pretty interesting. They have a blog, a charity, Good News, a newsletter, and they are located, where are they located? They are located in Australia. Okay? And if anyone should want to report some positive news, it's Australia after what they went through with the fires. So thank you, and thank you for listening. Look at the show notes. Read the whole article. Okay? I just wanted to do a little something for the end of the year that didn't just end on always on doom and gloom. I would have read the whole 99, but you get the drift. You go read it for yourself. Yeah. Because I think it's worth reading. I definitely think it is worth reading.